Okay, so to minimize the chance of something bad happening in your fume hood, you need to understand what makes a fume hood safe. So this graphic in the upper right is in memory of Sherry Sanji, who burned to death in her laboratory at UCLA in 2008. Our president and founder, Chip Albright, is just on the book of this incident. I got to be a lab accident. Should be available on Amazon in this week. Okay, since there's no accident, so we'll actually discuss the two ASHRAE standards, 110, 2026, and 110, 2029. So the current standard is 2016. By ANSI regulations, you must revise and republish your standard every 10 years. So the ASHRAE boys, including me, did not get that in 10 years. So what they said was, the 2026 is the 2016, just change the 1 to a 2, and now it's 2026. So the public review comment, which is mandatory, is available online until July 28th. So if you don't have a copy of the standard, you don't want to buy it from ANSI. If you get the review copy, it's going to be the same as the 2026 standard. Get a free copy. I recommend it. Okay, there's the standard. It's mainly a North American standard. There's a European standard, EM 14175, which is actually very similar. So do not say hood must pass 110. Why do you not say hood must pass 110? Because it has no meaning. So when you talk about the tracer DAS, which is the hardest part of the test, the 110 has no recommended limit on how much gas you can leak. So if you say what's past 110, everything passes 110 because there's no number. I compare it to taking my daughter on the roller coaster. There's a yardstick, it's 48 inches tall. If she's taller than that, then you go on the roller coaster. Well, the 110 standard just tells you how to build a yardstick. It doesn't tell you how long it should be. So you need to add a number to your spec to show what is a passive leakage rate if you're doing tracer gas. So ANSI 9.5, which I am a co-author of, does give that number in the 2022 standard. ANSI Z9.5, Liability 122. The number they give is 4.0 AI 0.1 part per million. So if you put that number and say use 110 to measure the number, now you have a test. Okay, so no changes. But they realize that a lot of people are going away from SF6 for their tracer gas. It's a horrible greenhouse gas, and like 26,000 times as much greenhouse warming potential as CO2. So not good. California has already banned the use of SF6 for fumer testing. So for 5 years, they've been designing new ejectors to put into the standard. They're just not done yet. They're going to keep on working, and as soon as they have an acceptable design, they will republish the standard. They won't wait 10 years. Pessimistically, I'm saying 3 years. Could be 2 years. 2 to 3 years is our best guess right now. So it's quite likely they're going to leave SF6 as a tracer gas, and you had 2 new tracer gases. One is a gas, propanol, that I have a slide up there. And the other is aerosolized liquid, isopropyl alcohol. As the guy that likes the isopropyl alcohol tells me, if my technician rents out, I send him to the grocery store and get some rubbing alcohol. What can be better than that? Now we're spawn-minded. So, one of the things is that most of you are doing what we call annual recertification. You test your ovens once a year to make sure they're still good. If you read the standard in detail, it says, we do not, as ASHRAE, recommend using SF6 for that annual test. Should be used at the factory to develop new hoods and by users to troubleshoot hoods that are hard to understand. But just to look at a hood that's working normally, just use the first three parts. Phase velocity, small scale visualization, and large scale visualization. There, I saved some of you about your mind. Okay, so general oversight in the United States is either federal OSHA or state OSHA. And the 1950 standard is 29 CFR 1910.1450. And what does it say about fume hoods? Absolutely nothing. It just says, make your life safe. You know what to do. It does reference the 2011 book from the National Research Council, Prudent Practices in the Laboratory. That is available for free to download. So I wouldn't even look at the OSHA standard. It has nothing to tell you. I would read the download. There's a lot of good stuff there. So it does say that containment testing of the fume hood is more important than phase velocity testing. Okay, I think you take over.
All right. So as he was talking about, containment testing is what is now being discussed. In prior practices, it mentions phase velocity, and of course we all know and test with phase velocity a lot, but I'm sure you've never read the ASHRAE-110 standard. It's one of the most interesting books since Harry Potter, and I'm sure you didn't even read this excerpt that I kindly put out for you, but I just wanted to put a note on this second sentence down there, third line. The flow visualization and phase velocity tests can be conducted without the tracer gas as a combination of quantitative velocity measurements. Phase velocity gives your numbers that all the number people like, as quantitative phase velocity measurements and qualitative evaluation of hood performance. Now, in my humble opinion, I like the numbers, I like the data, that's good. But what about this quality? What about the qualitative evaluation of, is the hood keeping you safe? Is the hood keeping chemicals inside, or is it allowing chemicals to escape? So that's really the punchline. Data is good, but let's see what kind of quality that this fume hood actually has behind it. And ASHRAE, right from the standard, says, do that. Please do so. So as we're getting into, I'm going to talk quickly about local smoke, small volume, and then large smokes, large scale smoke tests. For this is a little showcase. This is one of the handheld units that we use for small scale smoke. Also puffer bottles, you guys have seen that come out those little puffer. The problem with those is it doesn't really offer enough volume of smoke to really get a good view. I mean, it's good for the corners and the sidewalls and stuff, but you need to put out. So this is small, and this is one of the, this is a Hazer Professional unit. And the kicker about some of these handheld units, you have to make sure you get one that has zero velocity, zero exit velocity. It's very important because look at this next slide here. Oh, wants me to play the video again. This is an example of what that looks like when that smoke just spills out onto, because air is indeed a liquid. It behaves like a liquid at least. So with the zero ejection velocity, you have the ability to actually tell if that fume hood has the proper airflow, if it's sucking in the right direction, if it's, and et cetera, et cetera. So this is a little example of what it would look like to do a smoke test with a handheld unit like this. Again, puffer bottles work well. Even those small smoke candles, those are small units, but typically that's actually large volume. Pull the smoke candle, and because it produces a lot of smoke. And then, nextly, moving on to large volume, standard fog machines make it difficult. Why? Because it has a huge exit velocity. Like Victor calls them disco foggers. When you go to, they got the lights in the disco, and it's all out into the middle of the dance floor. They're settled inside, and those things are programmed to shoot smoke further than 12 or 15 feet, and you're sitting there pointing it at the front of your sash of the hood and pushing it in there. That's not showing you if it's containing or not. That's showing you that you have a smoke gun. So, yes, another little clip there. And then this is a better way to do it, where you have some large volume smoke that can be turned on, turned off. The amount of smoke that gets released into the hood is controllable. That's a better way to do your large smoke tests. You can do it like this. This method here is what what people usually think of when they hear about large scale smoke. They're like, oh, I've seen people do videos of this. I've seen this happen. But I would like to show you and tell you about, well, really quickly, the purpose of these tests obviously is to aid in the visualization. Big word for me. It's a powerful one that I want you to remember. We need to visualize this stuff. The data is good, the numbers are great, but smoke tests aid in visualization. So fog emissions are also hot. That produces a thermal issue as well, the high velocity. But to really get what you're looking for in small and local smoke, you have to have those right pieces of equipment, or else you're not getting an accurate depiction. And also, when you get these visual tests instead of these data tests, you can store those visual tests, but it just has to be in a video way. Photography, set up your iPhone, a video of the test. And now, just in the same way that I have a report that says space velocity is blah, 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 that nobody can read, nobody can decipher this report. Now I've got a video, some photos that are on a drive, that are on somewhere that could be stored and shared. And now you're like, is the bird working or not? Secret yourself, right? Visual, wrong team visual. Since 1991, that's also before I was born. So for a long time, people have actually been using lasers in their system, in their fume hood testing. And I'll just show you this little video right now. They've been using lasers in their testing to, along with the smoke that we've always been using. But the lasers give you an ability to kind of see more direction of what it actually is going. Again, visual. We got to release the smoke in there in the right way. And then we need to see what it's doing with the fume hood. This example right here is very interesting because a lot of people don't see this. It's only something that you can see with lasers. And which is why I put it in here, because it shows you the unique thing. Like, you couldn't have seen this with just regular smoke. It requires that laser being on the outside of the sash. And look at that lazy smoke dangling and sinking right in the sash. You can see the gap between the sash and the front. And it's literally going at it. The hood is sucking it back into the, that's great. It is sucking it back into the sash. But that's exactly where my nose is. You know, if I'm standing next to that hood and we're allowed, and the hood is allowing smoke to pass up, and good for the hood, it's been sucked back in there. But that is passing directly in front of somebody's breathing zone, and mistakes like this and things like this happen a lot. And without lasers and just smoke, you couldn't see some of these phenomenals. So that's why, since 1991, I think it started in Taiwan, right? Taiwan, a scientist in Taiwan started adding lasers to his smoke tests. This is also from the ASHRAE standard, and this is in the forward, very from the book. The performance tests are a method, and they may be modified. Big deal there. They're giving you permission to modify small and large volume visualization tests to evaluate, what is that word? Dynamic challenges, AKA, don't test your hood and throw it a low call. You know, let's challenge the hood. Let's walk by, down below, opening laboratory doors, walking past the hood, specific actions, moving things in and out of the hood. Let me get this video going while I talk. These are dynamic testing challenges that we come up with, and you know, with smoke and lasers, and where you can see that this hood is being challenged in a real world type way. Gosh, look at that loss of containment. Loss of containment shows up in green. You can see airflow behind the sash in red. That's what these lasers are doing on this particular model. But look at all this stuff. Boom, loss of containment right there up by the sash. And look at all that lingering green. Look at that lingering green down by the... So lasers are something that should be super considered nowadays. Document, store those results. It's visual results. If you want the report that I would go to sleep reading anyway, you might as well take some pictures and some videos, upload it into a cloud storage to where people have access to it. If you're a lab manager, your EHS guy, your Fume Hood users, they got access to see visually and understandable, does this hood contain or not? Base velocity, of course, is the big talk. Everybody wants to do face velocity. And as you can see of my gypsy genie, she is the only one and her crystal ball is the only one that could tell you if that wood is actually performing just based off of face velocity information. By the way, that's a joke. I'm trying to make a joke out of, you have to be a psychic to use face velocity and tell if your hood is contained. Over 30% of hoods fail, and we believe 70% of those hoods have an acceptable face velocity. So what's the deal? What's the deal? People stop our booth and say, oh, you guys test your hoods. This is so cool. Tell me about testing. How do you test your fume hoods? Just use face velocity. Oh, that's very nice. That kind of hurts our heart, though, because we know we have very many war stories that probably Victor will tell you about that that's not the whole pot. Look here, I don't know if you can tell that velocity monitor is reading 94, 97, 95, 99, 87. So it's fluctuating right around there in that 100 feet per minute, and that hood's not containing nothing. I would have said something different down in Mississippi, but that hood's not containing nothing. The best fume hood war does nothing unless it's connected to a properly designed and maintained laboratory ventilation system. It's our founder of the company, Chip Albright, says it like this. It's a three-legged stool. It requires a good user, a good fume hood, and a good HVAC system. If any one of those parts are missing, you're going to end up like my friend Lee here, and your school's not going to support you. So, hope that was helpful. Showing some of those videos, showing some of those examples of local and large smoke. Victor?
Excellent. So out of all the fume hoods in the world, we think that 1 out of 3 is periodically or continually unsafe. That's not a very good record for a dangerous condition that's going to be contained by a fume hood. So this is all, most of the guys in the firm are fume hood designers, fume hood testers. I'm an HVAC guy, male, because the HVAC is often the reason why the light failed. So about 1/3 of the fume hoods in America have a fan to exhaust about this big. Guess what? That's not big enough. So if you have one of these fans, which is serving one hood, in a 20-mile-an-hour wind, 10-foot high stack, the 20-mile-an-hour wind will blow it down to the roof in 50 beats. Now, you may have a lap building that's not 50 feet wide, but I think you do. Once it hits the roof, it's going everywhere. It's going down to the ground, in the doors, in the windows. It's going in, especially in the outside air intake of the air conditioners. First, it's going to hit the maintenance people. Then it's going to go everywhere in the lab. So we have field data to prove this. So Tom Smith at Free Flow, who has a booth out in the expo area, he's done more than 10,000 of the tracer gas tests. So what you see here here's the chemical vapor, or in Tom's case, the tracer gas. It comes up, it gets grabbed by the wind blowing left or right, and it ends up going into the air handler at entering the building. So I haven't had good luck with chemists wanting to protect themselves. They don't help me help them be safe. But in this case, it's not the chemist, it's everyone in the friggin' building. Janitorial, visitors, students, staff, administrative, they're all getting chemicals they did not sign up for. The chemists at least sort of acknowledge they work with chemicals and they might get exposed. All those other people are not on board with this. So all these little fans, something needs to be done, because whenever the wind blows, it's going into their building. So what Tom has shown is that I mainly looked at the data set from the first 4,000 tests. So he had a 5% failure rate due to wind blowback. And what this means is that A, it was windy that day. B, the one direction of the wind went into the one spot that leads back to that road. If it went to another spot, it would go into the building, but he wouldn't see it. That's why we're saying it's actually 30% and not 5%. Because you have to consider all the directions in the building that it could go into. So this is a horrible problem. The people that know this best simulate this on a wind tunnel because analyzing airflow around buildings is hideously complicated. So we have people that just look at the wind around buildings. There are specialists, and there's some of them that just look at the wind around lab buildings. So as Luke said, I have been on design teams for 108 chemical lab buildings, mostly university. I cannot pick the spot on the roof, the height, the flow that's going to guarantee safety. And I've actually got more experience in this area than most HVAC guys. I did graduate work at a wind tunnel. I've had some of the same experience as these guys, but these guys do it every day. You know, there's so many parts of the design of the building. They have to concentrate on the chemicals of the wind. To pick these exhaust fan, they will tell you if it's little, it's not going to work. So if you've got one hood, one fan, guaranteed failure. So SF6 is a great tool, not intended for everyday testing. Should be just troubleshooting and factory testing. If you are going to use it at your building, use it for the as installed. When the building is remodeled or when it's first built, that might have some usefulness. So what's in the life out of the hood in your building? So we talked about the global warming potential. That's why it's being phased out. California has already outlawed it. So it's a very strong greenhouse gas. It's very expensive. It's 6 times heavier than air. So you saw that green where it was coming out the top of the sash and going down the front of the sash. Sometimes the superhexafluoride doesn't reach the top of the hood because it's so heavy. So it doesn't always see leakage out of the top of the hood where lighter aerosols go. The instrument to test for SF6 costs $32,000. So that's a problem. So by the way, when the wind blows it back into the lab, then you don't know what's going on. You're failing the hood because of wind. What you can't tell is we should feel the wind. You can't tell if it's leaking out the front because it's already kept in the wrong. So your test is over for the day. You have to come back when it's not windy. Okay, so Luke, this is on YouTube.
Yes, it is. Hi, I'm Luke with Fume Hood Certified, and we're here to do another experiment. Here we have a small aquarium, and in the bottom of it, we filled it with SF6, or sulfur hexafluoride. Then we took these 2 balloons that are just filled with regular air, and we set them in there. And surprisingly, they're literally floating on top. Why? Because sulfur hexafluoride, or SF6, is 6 times heavier, more dense than the regular air. So these balloons have no problem just literally sitting right on top of the layer of SF6. So now we've turned the fume hood on and the fan is running. And it's supposed to be sucking all of the fumes and all of the air inside the chamber out of the building. Now the problem with testing with SF6 is that it's so heavy that oftentimes all of the SF6 falls right to the layer of the work surface, and it'll stay down here. And it leaves you vulnerable to when you want to test the upper vortex of the hood, maybe some of the sidewalls in the hood. When you want to test and get accurate and proper readings in those areas that are more high, but all the SF6 is not moving the balloons, and the balloons are still floating on our invisible layer of SF6. So all the SF6 has to be down in the bottom of the fish tank. It's an interesting experiment to test the power of the fume hood versus the density and the heaviness of the SF6, the very gas that we use to supposedly test the entire hood. You know, you don't want to make sure that just the bottom of your hood is safe. You want to make sure that your entire hood is actually containing and is safe. So thanks for tuning in to this experiment with Fume Hood Certified. We'll see you next time.
Probably going to keep SF6. They're already well on the way to adding 2 new ones, propylene and isopropyl alcohol. So each one needs a dedicated ejector. Try to get a similar result as possible for the SF6 ejector. So this has been an immense task. We have like 3 or 4 firms that design one and they send it to the other 3, and they redesign it and send it to the other 3. This is what's taken more than 5 years. So the big problem is that unlike SF6, both of these are flammable explosive gases. So I don't really like fume hood testers, but I don't want them to be killed in an explosion at their fume hood. So this is going to take some careful training and operation to try to make this a safe test. One of the drawbacks for isopropyl alcohol is it's very commonly found in chemical laboratories. So they may have to very carefully look to see if there's already some in the lab before they start testing the hood. So again, new ejector designs, they are findable. Okay, we're at that question and answer period.